Help me reach 1,000 subscribes. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every comment. Thanks. I used to think humiliation came in loud, sharp moments, like shouting, breaking, slamming doors. Turns out it can arrive quietly, wrapped in laughter that isn't yours. The night everything shifted. We were at Riley's apartment. She'd invited a few co-workers, 2 of her closest friends, and me, her boyfriend of 3 years, the guy she once used to brag about for being steady, grounded, the peaceful one. I remember walking in with a bottle of wine, feeling stupidly proud because I'd chosen her favorite. The room was warm, filled with chatter and music, and she looked beautiful. Light sweater, hair tied up, that small smile she reserved for moments she felt in control. I walked toward her, expecting the usual familiar softness in her eyes. Instead, I saw something else, something almost dismissive, as if my presence interrupted a rhythm she didn't want disturbed. Her friend Kayla was in the middle of telling some story about her boyfriend getting upset over a joke she made. Everyone was laughing. Then Kayla said, "Thank God you're not sensitive like Ethan here." She jabbed her thumb toward me. Smiling, I waited for my girlfriend, Harper, to correct her, maybe tease back or say something sweet. Instead, she smirked, leaned into Kayla, and said, "Oh, please. Ethan gets worked up over everything. He's like emotionally allergic. You can't say anything without him turning it into a TED Talk." The laughter that followed wasn't cruel. That's what made it cruel. Someone patted my back. Someone else chuckled and said, "Bro, lighten up." I hadn't even said a word. I hadn't even reacted. I just stood there, feeling like the room had shifted me into the role of the harmless, predictable punchline. And Harper, my Harper, was fine with it. No, she was proud of it. Proud of her joke. Proud of being the one who made everyone laugh. I forced a smile. Didn't say a thing. Didn't defend myself. Didn't look hurt. I just walked to the kitchen counter, set the wine bottle down, and poured myself a drink I didn't want. The glass shook in my hand, and I hated that it did. I hated that my body reacted even when my face stayed calm. Later, I found her on the balcony with her friends. I heard her say, "He's good, but sometimes I swear I feel like the guy in this relationship. I have to carry all the social energy. He's so quiet, sensitive. It's exhausting." Another round of laughter. Something settled inside me then. Not anger, not heartbreak, not even disappointment. It was something colder, clearer, a realization that I was not a person she respected, not when others were watching. And the worst part, the absolute worst, was that she didn't even think I would mind. She thought I would just take it, like I always did. On the ride home, she hummed along to the radio, completely unaware. When she finally noticed I'd gone silent, she said, "Oh, come on. Don't tell me you're upset over a joke. It wasn't that deep." I said nothing. She rolled her eyes and muttered, "Classic." When we got home, she showered, changed, and climbed into bed scrolling through her phone. I sat at the edge, looking around the apartment we shared, the framed photos, the small plants I watered, the shelves I built, the routines we constructed over years. Everything suddenly felt like props for a play I hadn't realized I wasn't starring in anymore. The next morning, I woke up before her. I made coffee, stood there holding the mug, staring at her shoes by the door. They looked unfamiliar. Or maybe I finally realized the person who wore them had become unfamiliar. I didn't confront her, didn't argue, didn't try to fix it. Something inside me had clicked into place. A quiet, steady shift. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want apologies. I didn't want explanations that would sound rehearsed or promises that would fade in a week. I simply wanted out. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Not through a fight she could twist later into a story about my sensitivity. No, I wanted to slip out of her world the way she had slipped out of respecting mine. That evening, she texted me, "Pick up dinner on your way home?" That was the moment I decided. That was when the erasing began. I didn't delete her. I didn't block her. I didn't pack in a rage. I just started removing myself piece by quiet piece. And Harper, in her usual confidence, didn't notice the first pieces missing. Not yet. The first thing I removed was my conversations with her. Not the messages, we still talked, but the energy behind them. No heart in my replies. No long paragraphs. No, sure, babe. Just neutral, polite acknowledgments from someone who didn't plan to stay long. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and decided to ignore it, telling herself I'd snap out of it. The second thing I erased was my availability. I stopped rushing home. Stopped asking about her day. Stopped filling the quiet spaces between us the way I always had. When she complained about her boss, I nodded without adding anything. When she made weekend plans, I answered with, "We'll see." The less I engaged, the more she tried to compensate, talking faster, making plans louder, acting like nothing was different. She didn't understand that the silence I was giving her wasn't punishment. It was closure. The third thing I removed was my place in our photos. I didn't take them down. I simply stopped appearing in new ones. She kept asking, "Hey, let's take a picture." And I would say, "Maybe later." Later never came. Slowly, our timeline stopped growing. The relationship froze in time, and she was the only one still trying to animate the illusion. The fourth thing I erased was my presence in our home. Not dramatically. Not all at once. First, it was a jacket I kept by the door. Then the books I always stacked on the nightstand. Then my tools in the drawer. She noticed a little. "Where's your jacket?" she asked one night. "In the car." I lied. She nodded, accepting it without realizing the car would soon hold much more than a jacket. I think she believed my quietness was a phase. Maybe she thought I'd eventually open up, and she could pat herself on the back for handling me so well. She didn't understand that once a man reaches a certain kind of silence, he's already gone. His body just needs time to follow. The final erasure came on a Sunday morning. She stood in the kitchen wearing my t-shirt, hair messy, smiling like nothing in the world had shifted. She reached for my mug, the one she always teased me for being weirdly attached to, and poured coffee into it. Then she looked up and said, "We should host again soon. My friends loved you." That sentence hit me harder than the humiliation itself. Loved you, as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't turned me into a joke for sport, as if my dignity had been a small price for her laughter. I watched her stir her coffee, completely unaware that she was stirring the last morning we would ever share. "I'm moving out," I said quietly. The spoon slipped from her hand and clattered against the mug. She blinked, once, twice, like she was recalibrating reality. "What?" "I'm moving out," I repeated. "This isn't working anymore." She stared at me like she expected me to laugh. Her voice cracked. "Is this about the joke?" "Ethan, seriously? You're being dramatic." There was the very thing she had built her comfort on, the belief that hurting me had no real consequences. "I'm not being dramatic," I said. "I'm being honest. You don't respect me, and you stopped trying a long time ago." I just finally caught up. Her face shifted, confusion to panic to disbelief. "You can't just leave. We've been together for 3 years. You don't get to walk away over one comment." "It wasn't one comment," I said. "It was a pattern, and it finally became too loud to ignore." She stepped forward, reaching for my hand. I stepped back. That was when something broke in her expression, something sharp, defensive. "So you're just giving up? After everything?" "No," I answered softly. "I'm letting go. There's a difference." The rest of the day moved slowly, painfully. She cried. She argued. She promised. She apologized. None of it reached me. Not because I didn't care, but because I had cared for so long, so deeply, that there was nothing left to salvage. You can't rebuild a foundation someone else laughed at. When I carried my final box to the door, she whispered, "Ethan, am I really losing you?" I looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time, she wasn't surrounded by friends or laughter or an audience to impress. She was just a woman realizing she'd pushed away the one person who never wanted to compete with her pride. "You already did," I said. I closed the door behind me, and the silence that followed was the first silence that felt like mine. Walking to my car, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel angry. I felt real, present, Like I'd finally stepped out of a room where I had been painted as a joke and into a life where I didn't need anyone's permission to be taken seriously. And somewhere behind that closed door, Harper finally understood the one thing she never believed. Quiet men don't break loudly. They disappear completely.